Here's how I do a watercolor. So I sketched this out with a charcoal pencil, used a vanishing point at the end of the road or so, and then created angled lines with the pencil for the road and the horizon and the roof line. Kind of sketched out the house a little bit and where the trees and fence and foliage would go so that I could have an idea where to put things. I did a wash with ultramarine blue, if I remember correctly, for the sky. Use the water to make it not look too flat and just kind of create a sense of clouds, and then put some of that onto the yellow fields and then put some blue on the road just as a wash, and put some browns into the blue so that it creates a sort of slate color, and some into the shoulder of the road for shadows, and then do some horizontal lines to create the shoulder, and then other colors of blue in to give it some variety, and then use the blues and browns mixed together for like the tree trunks and make them look thinner as they go off in the distance. Use some of that for the roof because it's a good slate color, and the edge of the roof, and then yet some cadmium yellow on top of the lemon yellow to make a sense of light and shadow on the fields, and then some browns for the fence posts, make them get shorter and thinner as they go off in the distance, and then some of that yellow mixed with some other colors for the grasses, and then we'll just use this dirty brush and some water to make a wash over the house and add some of that into the field and grass so that we have some shadows. And then get a smaller brush for details, a nice flat brush, and add in some grasses and put them at different angles, and use some of that for foliage by just dotting it around on the trees. Use some of that on the window panes and the porch posts, and for some pine trees, and have the colors get lighter as they go off in the distance by watering it down or using less paint. And then use some different colors, yellows, into the grasses and the foliage, and then blot out whatever is too much with the Kleenex, and then wash it around with the water. We don't want blue on the side of the house, so we'll blot out with the Kleenex, put some on the windows and the roof, and then put some different angles and colors into the grasses and the trees, and fence posts are drying a bit, so we add a little more brown so they don't look too flat and have a sense of shadow, and add some rails between them. And then use some of that to put some details on the house and define it a little more, and then drag the brush across for some siding, and then use some yellow and greens and blues mixed together and scribble them around for trees off in the distance, and then add in some blues and greens for some pine trees in between. So we have a variety of trees, and then some of the paint as it gets less saturated in the brush to make lighter trees in the distance. And then angle it with the tip of the brush, put some behind the house and around the fence, in front and in back, and in the shoulder of the road, and beyond the house, so that it draws the eye around. And then define the shoulder with some blues and browns mixed together, and our other brush and some water, and then scribble it horizontally and blot some out with the Kleenex so it's not too saturated, and then some horizontal blues and browns for shadows under the trees. And then put some of those yellows on the house and blues and browns on the roof, and blot some of it out just to give it like some contrast of light and dark. And then put some yellow, some orange, and or that would be purple and red on the door, and then put some of the purples in the grass so we have complementary colors to the yellow and some shadows, and it draws the eye around the painting. And then just go back in and put some more definition on the house, some heavier colors into the details, and some browns across the road so that it looks a little more like dirt, and just kind of scribble it for texture, and add some colors into the grasses, purples, yellows, blues, greens, just variety, and some shadows in the fence posts across the road and the shoulder, and into the trees, and then tree trunks and the foliage, just kind of get a little heavier as the paint dries to make the details, and then some slate color trees in the distance, make them look like pine trees, so it has a sense of distance, and some red in the sky so it's not all one flat color, and then blot it out with Kleenex and wash it with water. So that's basically how I do a watercolor, and that's my sped up version of it. I edited it in Loom and I created it with my phone, but then I used Google Drive, and then I used InShot, and I was trying to figure out, how to edit it, but I did record it at a slower speed.
Sunset. And yeah, we'll go back in with some more interesting colors when it's dried a little bit more. And
so yeah, I did go back in with some colors when it dried. I like to think about how God created the heavens and the earth in Genesis 1. He created a space, and he spoke it all into being: the plants, the animals, the sky, the land, the light, the dark. But man, he created from the dust of the earth, and he didn't speak us into being, but he breathed his own breath into our nostrils. And then he said that we should subdue the earth and rule over it, or have dominion over it, something like that. And so we get to be creative, just like God is creative, because we're made in his image and in his likeness. And I enjoy painting nature because it helps you to appreciate God's creation and to see things better. You see the colors more in the shadows and the lighting, and it's just very relaxing to paint for fun. So I hope you feel inspired to paint or draw or appreciate God's creation, and that you enjoyed this video of how I do a watercolor. Have a wonderful day.